I call this Committee of Economic Development to order. Can we bring down the noise level, please? Thank you.
We don't have all folks.
We have minutes, right?
Yes.
This one. I note that quorum is present. Vice Chair Hansen, do you have had a chance to look at the minutes?
Yes, Madam Chair, and I move the minutes for approval.
Minutes have been moved from March 20, 2024. Any discussion on the minutes? None, okay. All those in favor of adopting the minutes, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The minutes have been adopted. Thank you. Our first bill, we're going to switch things around on the agenda. So our first bill is House File, where is it? Oh, 4773. Rep. Vang, welcome to the committee. I move that House File 4773 be laid over for possible inclusion. Please introduce your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. So House File 4773 is a simple appropriation of $1 million to the Coalition of Asian American Leaders to support Asian women Minnesotan businesses. And I will keep my testimony brief so that I can allow more time for my testifiers to share their stories in entrepreneurship and in business, and so why this amount of funding is needed to support their endeavors.
Awesome. I believe you have some testifiers. The first testifier is Tao Ming Zhang. Please come to the testifying table. Introduce yourself for the record and proceed.
Good morning, Madam Chair. My name is Tao Mei Shang. I'm the Executive and Network Director for the Coalition of Asian American Leaders. I want to thank you for hearing our bill today, and I want to thank our Chief Bill Author, Samantha Vang, for leading the charge to empower and support Asian American women entrepreneurs. First, I want to thank all the committee members who are willing to meet with us. We had great conversations on both sides, the majority and the minority, and so we're really grateful for all the great conversations and getting to know everyone on the committee. CAL is a social justice organization focused on making substance change through policy advocacy, data and research, grant making, and leadership support. We have over 5,000 network leaders throughout the state of Minnesota. Asian Minnesotans have been hit hard by the impact of COVID-19 and the disturbing rise in violence against Asian Minnesotans. Women especially have been impacted by this. There was a report completed by CAL in 2020, and we found that Asian Americans were disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, with, even though at that time we only made up 5% of the state's population, 6% of the deaths, COVID deaths, were Asian American, and of that 6%, 50% were Hmong American. Women continue to struggle economically, dealing with the economic repercussions of the pandemic. These deaths have serious economic consequences for our families. Asian American women are overrepresented in frontline and low-wage jobs, especially in retail, restaurant, and personal care industry. There was data released by the government at the end of 2020 that said Asian Americans experienced the highest rates of long-term unemployment than any other racial or ethnic community in the country. And they were unemployed for close to over 6 months, and this was a result of both racial incidences and just other racial discriminatory acts. The pandemic also exacerbated the pay inequity among Asian American women. And so nationally, Asian American women make about 90 cents to every dollar, but if you break that down for Southeast Asians, Southeast Asian women only make 60 cents to every dollar that a non-Hispanic white male makes. This means that on a yearly income, it's only $35,000. And for Burmese women, they only make 52 cents to every dollar. And so they're only making $30,000 a year. And so over our lifetime, Asian American women, especially Southeast Asians, will lose $1 million in income. And that's not even considering trying to build wealth over multiple generations. So as a result, we've been talking to a lot of Asian American women and working with them on our Stronger Together grants. And we found that there is quite a significant barriers to Asian American entrepreneurs, both locally here in Minnesota as well as nationally. There was a study done by a Boston consulting firm that said Asian American women are the fastest group of entrepreneurs. And in fact, in Minnesota, Asian American women make 51% of the population, so they're the majority of the Asian American population. The reason why it's so hard for Asian American women entrepreneurs to be able to build their businesses is twofold. One is that a lot of financing institutions do not believe Asian Americans need financing because of the model minority myth that we can do well on our own. And the second piece is that they do not believe Asian American women are leaders. The model minority myth says that we are very good workers and we study hard and we put our head down and get the job done. But that doesn't demonstrate or reflect the fact that we can also be leaders in any industry, in any sector. As a result, Asian American women entrepreneurs are having a harder time being able to access resources. This is where CAL wants to come in. CAL has been working with a set of Asian American businesswomen already, and there's a growing number of entrepreneurs who have not started businesses who've come to us for help. Our goal is to be able to invest $1 million in supporting Asian American women in Minnesota to be able to start businesses and maintain their businesses. And we want to provide culturally and linguistically appropriate resources, as well as provide grants so they don't have to go and get loans, and help them to fill in the gap between using their own resources and being able to use other government resources. And lastly, I just want to say that there are three main points. One is that Asian American women have the widest wage gap in the country, as well as here locally. Second, Asian American women will lose $1 million over their lifetime if this wage gap is not remedied. And third, due to racial discrimination and the model minority myth, and also the myth that we are not leaders, this really highly impacts our ability to access resources that are actually meant for immigrant, refugee, and other women of color. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe there's another testifier. Please come to the testifying table, introduce yourself, and proceed. Laura.
Thank you, Chair Hassan and members of the Economic Development, Finance and Policy Committee. My name is Laura Bowler, and I'm here to testify on behalf of Laura B. Beauty, LLC, a small business that I founded 3 years ago. We offer on-location hair and makeup services for weddings. I am half Korean and adopted. Growing up, I struggled a lot with my identity, which inspired me to learn about the Korean culture and to connect with and befriend other Korean adoptees and people of color. When starting my business, I quickly realized that there was a lack of representation in the Minnesota wedding industry and not many options for people of color. For this reason, I started my business so that I could be a multicultural option for diverse couples. The goal of my business is to foster inclusivity within the Minnesota wedding industry. The journey of launching my business was fraught with challenges, primarily due to lack of financial resources. As a woman of color, entrepreneur, and business owner, accessing traditional avenues such as bank loans and state and federal funding programs proved incredibly daunting and unattainable. Thanks to CAL's Stronger Together Business Fund, I was able to grow and sustain my business. This support enabled me to participate in significant opportunities, such as the first ever Asian New York Fashion Week, where I provided hair services to models of color. It also enabled me to invest in inclusive shades for airbrush makeup, catering to diverse skin tones. I'm happy to say that my company won the Best of the Knot 3 years in a row, an award that represents the highest rated vendors in the wedding industry. I am proud to say my work in the beauty industry is not only for contributing economic development, but also diversity and inclusion in Minnesota. I urge you to support the funding opportunity to Cal this year. It's imperative for the continued success and resilience of small businesses owned by Asian women like me, which play a vital role in our community's economic landscape. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Laura, and congratulations for winning that award.
Thank you so much.
Discussion on the bill. Rep. Feist.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much, Representative Vang, for bringing this bill. I really enjoyed our conversation with the folks at Cal. And I think this is so important that we have equal opportunities to become entrepreneurs. I'm reminded of when I started my law firm almost 14 years ago, that it was a time when we were drowning in daycare expenses and kind of going backwards every month. And if it hadn't been for my dad helping me out, like, I don't know that I could have gone out on my own and become a business owner. So I think resources like this that are directed at people who don't have that generational wealth and don't have those traditional opportunities is so important. So thank you.
Rep. Igo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just kind of want to ask a few questions around, so, you know, we're looking at $1 million here. I guess I'm just curious, like, what kind of, we talk a lot in this committee about, like, return on investment, like, how many dollars are we going to match by, you know, putting $1 million in here and we go out and we help with assistance and stuff? What's going to be that return on investment?
Rep. Vang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Igo, thank you for your question. You know, I think as we've seen during the pandemic, when we see Asian American businesses has been impacted from COVID-19, and also a lot of small businesses in general has been greatly impacted from the pandemic. And so having this really what started that growth was to look at how can we support more small businesses, especially Asian Americans who've been marginalized during the worst time possible they could have ever imagined. And seeing how successful that Cal has supported these businesses has continued to see increased demand, that this is a need. And I can defer to my testifier, Taume, to explain how her organization has impacted these businesses and what's the rate of investment too.
Ms. John.
The return on investment will really be that we'll increase the number of women businesses. Right now, the requirement to be a female-owned business, you have to have 51% of the business be owned by women. And oftentimes, our businesses are family-owned and not actually women-owned. And so we're trying to shift the narrative to say it's a family-owned business that's run by women. So one, increasing the number of family-owned businesses. And when the businesses thrive, especially in the Hmong community, they are the lifeblood to many organizations and many communities. And so the return on investment will closely be close to 100%. They're constantly asked to donate and contribute back into the community. And relying on themselves to produce an income means that there's less reliance on other services that the government has to provide.
Rep. Igo.
Thank you. And I guess I'll just follow up. This might be a question for House Research. Will this fall under, like, the reporting mechanisms? So when this money goes out, we'll get a report back in a few years to find out how well it did?
House Research.
Madam Chair, Representative Igo, Justin Cope, House Research. With the state's grants management changes that were made last year, there would be a report required of the grantee, and that would be made public. I don't know if that is transmitted automatically to the legislature. I can check and follow up with you.
Thank you, Justin. Rep. Igo, follow-up?
Yeah, thank you. So the reason I ask about that is because I think it's really powerful for us as an economic development committee, but also as a legislature, when we look at putting dollars out, that we are able to look back and see how well they did, because that's a message we can also put out to the people of Minnesota as a whole, right? And that's going to inspire future entrepreneurs and people that want to be in business to get involved, saying, wow, look, the state's making investments like this, and we are seeing good growth. So I wanted to ask that question so we could follow up on it, because I think the work we're doing here, we need to make sure the general public finds out about it, because we need to inspire this state to grow business. So that's why I wanted to ask that second follow-up question. So thank you for the time.
Thank you. I believe DEED has extensive reporting mechanism in place. Lead Kosnick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Vang, thanks for bringing this bill forward. I also appreciate that there's a specific dollar ask. We've seen in other areas where it's just a blank appropriation. And the reason I bring that up is I think the dollar ask is a little bit generous in relation to what the budget is for the committee, but also in relation to the organizations. You know, the total revenues are about $2 million, maybe a little bit higher than that. And here we're asking for 50% of that as a grant. So I recognize that it's a scalable amount. I'm sure the chair does too, as we've talked a little bit. And my concern with it is I would suggest, if this is something that we're going to do, to make sure that 95% of the dollars that we allocate are going towards actual businesses and not just administrative propping up an organization. I think it's a very good and valid organization. You have other resources to do that, and the language of the bill is a little bit more broad than I would like to see. I would, as your other testifiers, support those other family and women-run businesses. I think it's a worthy initiative, but it needs to be tightened up in the language to earn my support. And then I think the dollar amount in relation to the total revenues and assets of the organization are probably a little higher than what we can afford as a committee, but also in relation to the work that's being done there currently in terms of grants. And then also it is in the wording of the language of the bill is grants, not loans. Is that correct, my understanding? So there is no repayment if the author, the testifier?
Rep. Vang.
Madam Chair, yes, that's correct.
Okay. Okay, so just a couple concerns that I have. I appreciate the initiative and the discussion, but those are a couple things that I'd like to see tightened up. Thanks.
All right. Any other discussion? Oh, Rep. Perryman.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Rep. Vang, for bringing this forward. It does have great intentions, and I'm looking forward to how it will impact. I know this organization came to my office and was a real eye-opener that in St. Cloud, there is a great need. So I appreciate this bill. I just have a curious question, and that is, what's the difference between a micro business and a small business?
Madam Chair, I'll defer to Talme.
Hi. So based on our economic work by Cal, most of the Asian American businesses that we surveyed have 5 or less employees. And the definition for small businesses under the Small Business Bureau is actually much higher than that. It's more like up to 100 or below. And so we say small business a lot, but mostly it's micro businesses because they're 5 or less employees, and mostly they're family run, so it's all family members.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rep. Vang.
All right, any other discussion? No? All right. I renew my motion to, for House File 4773 to be laid over for possible inclusion. Thank you, Rep. Vang. All right, our next bill is House File 4123, and I believe Rep. Feist is covering the bill presentation. All right. Rep. Feist, would you like to move for House File 4123 to be laid over for possible inclusion?
Yes, so moved, Madam Chair. I'm going to grab one more chair. So that
All right.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
does Chair Lillie think he's too good to be here?
I believe there was a time conflict, and he's actually chairing his own committee. Rep. Feist, please explain the bill.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee. So I learned a lot about this bill this morning, and I just signed on as a co-author because it's awesome. House File 4123 provides an opportunity for our state to make a one-time investment in an exciting and meaningful event. In the summer of 2026, Minnesota will be hosting the 2026 Special Olympics USA Games. The mission of this event is to, quote, create an inclusive event that celebrates ability, delivers the highest quality experiences for all who participate, and leaves a legacy of positive change in Minnesota, unquote. The event is projected to be one of the largest sporting events in 2026 over the course of a week-long program. It will consist of 17 Olympic-type team and individual sports, and is projected to attract nearly 100,000 individuals between athletes, fans, and volunteers. This event is an important and unique opportunity for Minnesota to elevate an event focused on the disability community, a critical but at times overlooked part of the inclusion and diversity efforts of our state. Additionally, the event is anticipated to have a significant economic impact here in the Twin Cities, nearly $75 million. House File 4123 seeks $4 million one-time funding for the 2026 Special Olympics USA Games, and I ask you to join me in advocating for our state's support for this important event. And I'm now going to turn it over to my two testifiers who will speak briefly about the event and the impact of the state investment.
Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and for the consideration of our bill. And Senator Feist, thank you. Representative, sorry. Thank you for stepping in and for your support. My goodness. I'm Christy Sovereign. I'm the CEO for the 2026 USA Special Olympics Games that, as you said, will be here in June of that year. The most important thing that I would like you to take away is that while the games will be anchored in sporting activity, we're really hosting a humanitarian event. The Special Olympics mission is to improve the lives of people with intellectual disability, and it does so with a focus both on and off the field. On the field, we'll host 18 sporting competitions that week, but off the field, 3 priorities will be advanced. The first is health and wellness. Healthy Athletes is a Special Olympics program that is focused on addressing challenges that people with intellectual disability have in getting access to health services. So accordingly, free health screenings will take place during the week of the games. The second priority is advancing inclusion in youth. We want inclusion to be a focus at the earliest ages possible. So our efforts will include Young Athlete Program, which unifies children with and without intellectual disability from the ages of 2 to 7. And also it'll include Champion Schools event. Our Champion Schools in Minnesota are those that have programs that have unified sports within the schools and are very focused on social inclusion. We've got about 300 in the state of Minnesota, and we'd ultimately like all of them to be Champion Schools. So that'll be a priority that we're pushing with the platform that we have. And finally, and very importantly, our third priority is on athlete employment. Only 18.5% of people with intellectual disability are employed to the level of their ability. We want to see the inclusivity of sport move into the workforce. So our priority in this space is to include a unified work fair that gives both athletes and corporations the tools to address these statistics of under and unemployment. The event, as you said, is generated or expected to generate an economic impact of over $75 million if, like we are the beneficiary of previous USA Games before us. More so, however, we're looking to address an underserved community. Funding is particularly important for us to enable these off-the-field elements that I spoke of. So we're keen to bring Minnesota together with the platform we have in front of us and really leave a lasting legacy of inclusion in the state. Thank you. And Madam Chair, at this time, I'd like to invite Abby Hirsch, an athlete from Special Olympics Minnesota, to say a few words on behalf of our athletes.
Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself and proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Abby Hirsch, and I am an athlete with Special Olympics Minnesota. I had the honor of representing Team Minnesota in the 2014 USA Games, and it was a dream come true. On behalf of the 4,000 Special Olympics athletes that will participate in the 2026 USA Games, I am honored to be here today to share their voices. Hosting the 2026 USA Games will be incredible. It will put Minnesota on a national stage and shine a light on the abilities of people who have an intellectual disability. We want the 2026 USA Games to be life-changing for the Minnesota community. Beyond sport, our efforts will focus on unified sports in schools, health and wellness, and employment of people who are neurodiverse and have intellectual disabilities. It is an opportunity of a lifetime for our athletes and the community to come together as one Minnesota. We have the opportunity to advance the mission of Special Olympics and showcase Minnesota as a beacon of togetherness, hope, and unity. I am proud to be an athlete messenger and hopeful for a more inclusive world. Madam Chair and members of the committee, thank you so much for considering our funding request.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for testifying on this bill. Discussion on the bill.
Sure.
Wiener?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Abby, for testifying. I've seen a lot of people who have come in and been very nervous. You handle yourself very well. Thank you for being here. With that being said, I have a couple questions. The bill itself is stated as providing food and lodging for the athletes. How does that apply to staff? Because I know some individuals who may be joining you at the Special Olympics. So how does that apply to coaching or family when this bill specifically states just for the athletes?
To the testifier or Rep. Price,
Yeah.
whichever one.
If I can just preliminarily answer, we were looking at that language as well and thinking that it's going to be laid over today and we might want to hone that language, but I'll let the actual expert talk about the vision for this funding.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair. Yes, thank you for your question. We expect that about 90% of the funds raised for the USA Games will come via corporate partnerships and private donations. And if you think about maybe the Maslow's hierarchy, if you will, of the Games, food and housing of athlete and all that we expect will be taken care of with line of sight that we have to that. It's really, as I said, these dimensions off the field that we come here today and graciously ask for consideration of the bill. It is to advance employment. It is to advance these things that help the athletes, help the families, help broader Minnesota with the opportunity that we have to host here.
Rep. Wiener, do you have follow-up?
Yeah, and I guess that was my concern is when we have language that's so specific to food and housing, because I understand the other expenses that come along with a family or staff to go with that, and that was really my concern, because I think we all want this to be a great activity for all involved, but if there's financial constraints for those family members, then that kind of puts a hamper on some of that. So I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Oh, Lead Kosnick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Hirsch, you did a great job. Thank you for joining us today, and you're a great ambassador. My question, just kind of, again, similar to the previous bill, the constraints of the targets of this committee and the legislature in general. I know we did a $5,000 allocation to the Bloomington's possible World's Fair for a bid that was not received.
Million.
Yeah, what did I say, 5,000?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yeah, 5 million. Yeah. So I'm wondering if those unused funds could be apportioned to reallocate here, looking at the targets. I know that there's other people looking at those funds that were previously dedicated to this committee work. I would suggest, and maybe, let me know if you need support on that, but if that's an avenue that the chair and the committee wants to go to, I would look at that. And it's good to hear that 90% of the fundraising is coming from other sources, private corporate sources, and I think that's wholly appropriate if the state is able to do some from an economic development and incentive. I don't really oppose that. I appreciate the work that the organization does. I think it's important to celebrate those athletes and some of the other initiatives that you'd mentioned. So hopefully the committee can find another resource, because I know the direct resources we have are limited, but I would take a look at that, Madam Chair, as we put the bill together. It's a good, a friendly suggestion.
Thank you, Lead Kosnick. We will look at every avenue we'll get money from. But right now, our Target is what it is. And I know that the Bloomington money will be canceled, so we will work with Dee to figure that out.
Madam Chair, if I just
Yeah.
follow up on that. Where are the activities for these events scheduled to take place, if you don't mind, Madam Chair?
To the testifier.
Lakeville, okay.
Yeah, Madam Chair. They'll be hosted at the University of Minnesota, and we'll have a secondary hub location up at the National Sports Center in Blaine for those sports that can't be hosted on campus.
All right. It's not Lakeville, but close enough.
Close enough, Madam Chair.
All right. Closing comments.
Yeah, thank you, committee, for the great discussion of this really wonderful bill. I think that investments like this are really great economic development investments, and also we're excited to support these athletes. And in case you were wondering, Abby is a swimmer and a weightlifter, so we wish you luck in 2026.
Thank you. Rep. Weiss renews her motion that House File 4123 be laid over for possible inclusion. Thank you for coming. All right. I am going to move over, and Vice Chair Hassan will take over.
Where is this, that's A1 somewhere?
It's not in there. You got to look at the section. It's basically the appropriations that we made already here.
He wants more money.
No more money, just they have another year to spend it.
While Chair Hassan makes her way to the testifier table, Rep. Hassan moves that House File 3449 be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. I understand there's an A1 author's amendment. I move the amendment. If you would like to discuss it, Chair Hassan.
Yes, Madam Chair. The A1 amendment adds two changes to this bill. First of all, this is Deed's correction bill or fix-up bill. And the two things that are added into that the A1 adds on is one, the funding that we allocated for the St. Paul Library, we make changes to that. And then the other one is money that has been allocated to City of Minneapolis, $10 million. Last year, they're using $2 million of that money for a specific program, relocating the water project elsewhere. Those are the two technical changes that are made into this bill, and then once we act on that, we have the Deputy Commissioner to talk about the deed change.
Thank you, Chair Hassan. Any discussion to the A1 amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting the A1 amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the amendment is adopted. Chair Hassan, please proceed with your bill as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to have Deputy Commissioner just walk through what the changes are on this bill, and then we'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Chair Hassan. Next up, we have Deputy Commissioner Kevin McKinnon. Please introduce yourself and proceed.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. Kevin McKinnon, I'm the Deputy Commissioner of Economic Development at DEED. We have two technical changes that we were seeking from last year's bill. The first is a change to the Canadian Border Relief Program, which was a $5 million appropriation, where we work with the Northland Foundation to address issues up on the Canadian border. There was no allowance for administration for that program, and specifically for the Northland Foundation, and so we are asking for a change to that to allow some funding to go to the Northland Foundation to operate the program. The second technical fix that we have is adjusting the timeline of the availability of funds under the Launch Minnesota program. This program supports early stage and small businesses and startups with a variety of grant programs. Historically, we've had 4 years to spend this funding, and the language did not include that. For example, when you have small companies that must raise additional capital in order to get the grants, if they don't raise that money in the time period in which they're set out to do, we then would have to, what we typically do is keep the grant money to be able to grant it out to someone else. And in this case, we'd be losing that opportunity for additional grants for small businesses. Those were our two technical fixes that were included in the bill. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner. Any discussion to House File 3449? Seeing, Lead Koznick. Lead Koznick passes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, House File, Rep. Hassan moves that House File 3449 as amended be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. I think you win for the shortest bill this session.
I'm good with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that concludes our agenda for the day, and we are adjourned.